Welcome everyone to the Town of McCandless Town Council meeting of October the 11th, 2021. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Council Member Sponholz. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, seminars and conferences. We just have the conference that's coming up this weekend. You're signed up for that or you're not. The next announcement, we're going to have Lynn Atman. It's going to come up to the microphone and just tap on it, make sure it's working, Lynn. Yep.
Yes. Hello, my name is Lynn Atman, and I've come out in front of the council before, but I just wanted to come this time to just let you know about our litter day again. I'm sure everybody's aware it's on the front of the building. It's this Saturday from 10 to 12 in McCandless. We try to tackle all the roads that we can get volunteers to help us with. This year had an idea to go out to local businesses and ask for some donations so we could try to sweeten the deal a little bit to get more people to come out. I don't know what the numbers are right now. John Bajarski has that the amount, and we'll be working on that tomorrow night. But I just wanted to mention a couple of them is the Cadence Clubhouse, Giant Eagle, Pennzoil, Trader Horn, Handles, Massage Envy, Gifted Hands, Body Bar, Sports Clip, the Saddlery Store, Longhorn, Brewster's, Dutz. That's just what I know so far. So we might have some more by Saturday. If anybody, as stewards of the town in your wards, I would encourage you to ask for volunteers. And if you see things that need done, direct them our way. John Bajarski is at the extension 118 to sign up. Anybody wants to help. I just wanted to bring up one other thing, and I sent an email to Bob and John Bajarski and Kim right before the meeting so that you all will get a copy of this. Are you aware August 26th of this year, Governor Wolf put a his administration wants to combat litter in the state of Pennsylvania. He urges the public to stop the costly and unsightly practice. Governor Wolf says we cannot keep our communities clean without the public's help. I call on everyone to help to take a personal responsibility for ending this ugly practice. Through enforcements, cleanups, and volunteering, this is to beautify Pennsylvania. There's many points and you can read them all when you get it, but the one point that I really want to hone in on is enforcement of the town's ordinances is a big setback, and we consistently hear the town's lack of resources to enforce our codes is a primary reason they are not being enforced. Consider hiring more people to properly manage the enforcement of our town's code. And we do have a code enforcement officer. He is part-time, but I just plead that I think we do need more help with this. And that's my little blurb on that. There's all kinds of ideas that he has. He wants businesses to have waste receptacles for garbage, for cigarette butts, to start looking at cameras to see who's littering, and enforcement fines for people that have unsecured loads, that don't, have ensuring public waste infrastructure. All kinds of ideas. It's all in this mandate from Governor Wolf. So I thank you for listening, and just continue to be stewards in your ward and help us to do the job that we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. DSC does a great job with cleanup day, and Lynn helps lead that, and she does a great effort. You could see why when she was telling me all the things to announce, I said, no, you just say it. So
Thank you.
No, thank you. Some more announcements, or we're still taking applications for some authorities, boards, and committees for the town. Please look those over and see how you can use your talents to help
get involved and give back to the town. Lynn already talked about roadside cleanup, which is this Saturday. Also, I want to remind everyone that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Everybody get your mammograms. Okay. Last announcement is, you'll notice when you came into the meeting that attached to the agenda, there's a copy of resolution number 12 from 2016. Along with that and Robert's Rules of Order, that's how we govern our meetings. I'd like to specifically call your attention to number 5, which says, the president of town council may rule out of order any offensive, insulting, threatening, scandalous, or obscene comments as determined by the president to be disruptive or to otherwise prevent the orderly conduct of the official business of that meeting, or who becomes boisterous or who makes threats against another person or against public order and security may be forthwith barred by the president of town council from continued attendance at the meeting unless permission to continue shall be granted by the majority vote of those council members present. So I just want to remind everyone that we're all neighbors here, and I appreciate everyone helping keep our meetings orderly and respectful. Those are the end of my announcements. I'm calling, it's the minutes for September 27th, 2021. Are there any additions or changes for any council members? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes as submitted? Okay, council.
I move to approve the minutes submitted to each council member of the meeting of town council September 27, 2021.
Second.
Okay, I think Councilmember Swire got in on that for a second. Again, any changes? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, this is the part of the meeting for public comment. This is either on agenda items or non-agenda items. Each individual has 5 minutes to speak. We will start with, do we have any Zoom? We'll start with members that are here, and then if you are a Zoom member, if you can hear us, please put your name in the chat box so we can call on you in the order that you are in the chat box. Put your address too, please, and we'll give you a little more time to do that, and we'll start with comments here in the meeting, people who are present. So if there are any public comments, please come up to the microphone. You just come forward if no one's up there.
Hi, my name's Sam Camerata. I live in Pine Creek Road, 530. I just noticed recently, obviously I missed some meetings. There's a motion going on for the Devlin Field for lighting. I wanted to make a comment on that. I've been grown and raised in this community, 69 years of being a resident. I played baseball from 6 years old on up through high school. We never had lights and I lived through it. $450,000 for lights is like what they did at North Allegheny High School for 9 games. They do lease it out for the lighting. I don't know if there's any contract involved with leasing this out for the $450,000, but I think that money could be spent in much better circumstances, especially for the flooding we've had, any storm management. I'd like you to at least address that. I don't know who RAAC is. Is that the Baseball Association?
The Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County.
Okay, so they're the ones that are going to be donating this money? Okay, fully?
Yes.
Township is not responsible, okay. Oh, that kind of changes things, but I wanted to address the fact that we're spending money, I thought it was a township, for lighting, which I think could go somewhere else. The only other comment I have is the comment period is generally before we see any presentation, which is kind of a hard thing to do, to be able to comment on anything that's been presented. I don't know if that could be looked at, but I would like to address that. And thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments?
I'm Barbara Richards from 305 Manor Court. And I'm first troubled that the town will not even respond to queries on mccandlessandme.com, which they created to inform the public about the issue of a shooting range in McCandless Crossing. Yet they allow derogatory comments and unrelated zoning comments against the Coalition for Safe Community Spaces and even the Sisters of Divine Providence to be published and remain on the site. We know who these comments are from. You are skirting the issue of bad zoning practices that hurt the community of McCandless, and you are deliberately avoiding a public hearing on a zoning issue that clearly is in serious need here. Why are you so afraid? Because to admit that this type of zoning requires the public to know what is going on? Were mistakes made previously in 2018 that you don't want to admit? What is going on here? Are the people of McCandless being served? Is the public being served by your silence and rejection of public concern? And that is something you will, as the town council, have to live with, even though many of you seem to be jumping ship when the going gets tough. The coalition is not against the Second Amendment and not against shooting ranges. We are against the location of this shooting range and continue to believe that the town should not give an occupancy permit to use 900 Providence Boulevard as a shooting range for these reasons. It continues to create a public safety issue. A public shooting range so close to where this community recreates and lives is a hazard. To encourage bringing guns before and after using the range into places like restaurants, stores, and cinemas is a very bad and dangerous idea, and a decision that will threaten the safety in this family-oriented neighborhood center of McCandless Crossing. The range is also surrounded by religious and community institutions. No other communities in North Hills has allowed that, and there are several other indoor and outdoor ranges properly zoned and operated. The shooting range being much less than 1,000 feet from the Providence Heights Alpha School is a violation of the Gun-Free School Zone Act. The township continues to conveniently misinterpret this act, saying the facility being on private property is therefore allowed. But this is a very arguable point because this act was intended to protect our children, not serve developers and businesses. The building was zoned as a fitness area, training facility, and office space. We do not believe the town has the right now to call it an indoor recreation center when indoor shooting range is not a permitted use in that category. For you to greenlight Midwest Shooting Center would be, as it was in 2018, a denial of your own mission for McCandless to govern with integrity and an attitude of public service and selflessness. Please do not allow this business to threaten the sense of peace and safety we expect and enjoy in McCandless. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments? Sorry.
Sister Mary Troutman, 9,000 Babcock Boulevard, a Sister of Divine Providence. I recognize that you, the town council and town administration are in a very difficult position right now. A shooting range in McCandless Crossing. If you refuse to issue an occupancy permit to Midstate, you may be liable to Midstate for breach of contract. If you grant the occupancy permit, you will be accountable to the citizens of McCandless for breach of trust. You will have betrayed the trust of the citizens, especially the neighbors, Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church, the Sisters of Divine Providence, Providence Heights Alpha School, LaRoche University, the shops in McCandless Crossing, the residents in the club, the residents in the dwelling along Cumberland. So you are between a rock and a hard place. And either way, it is the citizens who lose. Remember the mission statement. The town of McCandless governs based on solid core values of integrity, straightforwardness, pragmatism, and an attitude of public service and selflessness. There's also the matter of the required annual permit issued by the chief of police, only issued once to impacts and apparently never renewed. I would like to highlight some of the points of the permit. Instructions by impact shall be given only by certified firearms instructors. Does this include training on assault weapons? Minors shall not be allowed in the range unless accompanied by adults at all times. Who enforces this? All shooters must complete an impact safety orientation program before they are allowed to discharge firearms on the site. Must shooters be licensed in any way to own or carry guns? And what types of weapons? Assault weapons? During the years I did guardianship work and mental health commitment work for Mercy Hospital, UPMC, and private individuals, a required form was what we nicknamed the gun form. We had to complete it and attach it to every guardianship petition and commitment form. The form required a brief description of the individual and was attached to the petition. If the subject was declared incapacitated by the court, or if the individual was ordered to be committed, the form was sent to the state police. Otherwise, the form was discarded. Does anyone even check to see if such a form is on file with the state police for each person who comes to shoot? That was one of the purposes of the form. Another point, applicant will not sell, distribute, or tolerate the sale or distribution of alcohol or controlled substances on the premises. Applicants shall take all reasonable precautions to prevent the consumption of alcoholic beverages or other controlled substances on the premises. There are numerous other facilities in McCandless Crossing where one can drink, then go to a shooting range within walking distance and shoot. How will this be controlled? Reasonable is a very subjective standard, and it suggests that it is still possible that there could be safety violations in a place like McCandless Crossing. Access to the range shall be secured with ingress and egress permitted only during the range's operating hours. This is very important for those who wish to avoid McCandless Crossing during the hours of operation. This all creates quite a dilemma. What to do? Surprisingly, Impacts itself provided a model as to what to do. When it closed in early spring of 2020, it directed its members to other shooting ranges, those that were built with the citizens in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments? What do we have from Zoom?
We have one comment.
Okay. Okay.
Am I on?
You are on and we can hear you. We are having some technical difficulties, so we can't see you, even though you may be able to see us, but we can hear you clearly. So when you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, Rita Martin, 10585 Grubbs Road. I want to say that I support wholeheartedly the Coalition for Safe Communities and feel that the use of this facility in this particular location is illegal. But what I want to address tonight is that I couldn't let this pass, being a librarian. There was a nice young man who stated the statistics prove that you are safer owning a gun for self-protection. Well, we know the quote attributed to someone very famous that there are three types of lies, damn lies, and statistics. That would be Mark Twain. And he's right, because really it is absolutely impossible to get good data on this particular issue. So there's no definitive research. At least Lott and Gleck are the two that are most often cited, and their research is not empirical and it's not peer reviewed. And the one peer-reviewed empirical data is from a Harvard University professor, and he uses the figures from the National Crime Victimization, and he proves that the average person has basically no chance in their lifetime of ever using a gun in self-defense. He also proves that another problem is that there's no consensus on the definition of defensive gun use. And thirdly, there's no standard of gun training on the use of guns for self-defense, even for police officers. There's no standard. It depends where and when. So these statistics are flawed, and people should be aware of that before they make these decisions about how safe they'll be, because it's more likely that guns will be used to escalate arguments. Firearms are used far more often to intimidate. Guns in the home are used more often to intimidate people within the home. And criminals who are shot are typically the victims of other criminals. Self-defense gun use is rare and not more effective at preventing injury than other protective actions. So just wanted to correct that very nice young man. There are no statistics that prove what he said. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else on Zoom? Right then, moving on, that closes public comment. Moving on to the next item, we have a stormwater utility presentation. When you plugged in your,
I suggest we not do that. I suggest we go old school.
okay, all
We
right.
have,
If you
want to try?
we have access to be able to see the presentation, you may want to pass some of those out so other
Sure.
members of the audience could
Okay.
potentially at least be able to see
Okay.
if they have an interest.
Yeah, and we apologize. They have a nice PowerPoint presentation. We just can't see it.
And it is posted online.
So members of council, my name is Dan Dosroff. I'm your town engineer. I'm with Gateway Engineers. I'm here tonight with Ryan Boner from our office. We're here just to provide some information regarding a stormwater utility, sort of what that is and what that means, and give you an idea of the types of projects that can be used for using funding options, some case studies, and then sort of a summary about that is our agenda. Just in brief, Gateway's been around for a long time. We've been involved in stormwater for a long time. Both Ryan and I have worked on several stormwater utilities throughout the region. Most recently, we helped Hampton implement their fee a year ago. And really, the reason why we're here is the cost of stormwater management. The town, as the council knows, and for the public, maintains a pretty big stormwater system. That system consists of approximately 130 miles of storm sewers of various sizes. And we also maintain 4,500 inlets, 60 stormwater impoundments, that's called those stormwater ponds to hold the water back, several bridges and other stormwater facilities. In addition, there are another 67 privately owned detention ponds out there, which McCandless has to enforce and make sure that they have proper operation and maintenance for inspection. This infrastructure helps convey stormwater to creeks and streams, which flows to our rivers in the area. The system as we have it allows us to prevent flooding in most areas in the town. There is still some flooding, we acknowledge that. But the stormwater system effectively conveys water from neighborhoods and brings them to Pine Creek, Lowry's Run, and other watersheds within the community. I like to refer to stormwater really as the fair-haired stepchild of infrastructure. And I say that in jest, but it's very important, but we only really recognize our stormwater infrastructure when it rains. But when it rains, we do need it. Right now, stormwater has come to the forefront of other things, including coming down from the federal government. There's a requirement as an MS4 community. Town council is aware of this, but the town actually has a stormwater permit for all things related to stormwater in the community. Ryan's going to talk a little bit more about that, but that was an unfunded mandate that came down from the federal government several years ago. It requires a permit. It requires minimum controls. It requires pollution reduction, all sorts of things that were never thought about 10, 15 years ago related to stormwater. So it's something new. Our stormwater systems in the town are getting up there in age. Some of our infrastructure dates back to the 50s and 60s and 70s when the town was developed. There was a lot of corrugated metal pipe put in. The town's been doing a lot of work to rehabilitate those pipes, but there's still a lot of them out there. We also have to deal with, as we said, flooding issues and other things that can occur due to changes in our climate and other things we're seeing with recurrence of storms and so forth. So with those things in mind, we just wanted to dive a little bit more into the MS4 part of this, and Ryan's going to take that piece of it.
Thank you. So yes, the MS4 permit, as Dan mentioned, started with the federal government back in 1999. It was focused more on industrial sites back then. And then in 2003, it got pushed over to enforcement toward municipalities, local governments, things like that. At that point, the state took over most of the enforcement side. But what's involved with the MS4 permit is the permittee has to implement a stormwater management plan and then track progress toward measurable goals within the permit. And then beyond that, they have to submit annual reports so the DEP can really see what kind of efforts the permittees are putting forth. We've seen this permit grow over the years. This is a third or fourth permit cycle. It's a 5-year permit cycle. And each time it seems that there's either things added on or it's just getting a little more strict and stringent. So one of the new things they've added on with this current permit is called pollutant reduction plan, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a minute. But the MS4 permit is based on what's called the urbanized area. Okay, there's an urbanized area all around the city, and it's essentially more dense areas that are under the MS4 permit. So most of the town is within the urbanized area, with the exception of North Park. That's the only part that the town does not have to worry about. So let me talk a little bit about just general MS4 compliance efforts. Again, this is an unfunded mandate that the town deals with, that many municipalities deal with. But we mentioned implementing a stormwater management program, and then it's broken up into what they call 6 minimum control measures. And again, tracking progress for each of those, submitting reports and things like that to show that there is compliance efforts being completed. So the minimum control measures, as I mentioned, there's 6 of them. They deal with things like public education, making sure people in the town understand what the MS4 permit is and why it's in place. Getting the public involved is another one. Having venues for people to participate in cleanup events and things like that. Some of the stuff we heard here a little earlier tonight. illicit discharge detection and elimination is building out a storm sewer map and then monitoring the water that comes out of the storm sewer system when it hits the creek. So you understand sort of what's in the water and then what needs to be done to remedy if we find anything there. And then there's two that deal with construction sites, one being during construction, making sure that the contractors are doing what they need to do to make sure that the erosion and sedimentation is taken care of on site, all those BMPs are in place, and then handling the post-construction stormwater, so the ponds that Dan was mentioning, making sure those are functioning properly. And then finally, there's a piece of pollution prevention and good housekeeping, which is more specific to the municipality taking care of their own facilities. So public works garage, salt dome, those are sort of the big ones that DEP looks at. So I mentioned a minute ago, the pollutant reduction plan being a new requirement. Basically what this requirement is we're required to reduce the amount of sediment going into the waterways. And there's four watersheds that we're dealing with: Pine Creek, North Park Lake, Pine Creek, Lowry's Run, and Gertie's Run. And this requirement states that we have to reduce the amount of sediment by about 10%. Okay. And if we can remove the 10%, there's also a requirement that says 5% of all phosphorus has to be removed as well. So if you can get the 10% sediment, the phosphorus is included with that. They almost give you credit for it. Now, the way we do that though is essentially constructing construction projects that are built to eliminate the amount of sediment being eroded from the stream bank. So we'll talk a little bit about the town's requirements within this pollutant reduction plan. The amount of sediment that needs to be removed within a 5-year permit term is about 260,000 pounds. Okay, the town is well on their way to achieving that goal. There's a couple projects left to make sure we hit that mark. One is an additional stream bank restoration project, which is about 750 linear feet. And then there's a couple smaller projects that deal with stormwater ponds and water quality inserts and things like that that help capture the sediment before it gets into the streams. So you can see on the slides there, I'm on slide 14. That's on Highland Road. This is a stream bank restoration project that was completed in the town. It shows you sort of the before and after of how the stream looked previous, and then how it looks after the stream bank has been reconstructed and more stabilized to eliminate the amount of sediment getting into the stream. So that covered MS4 from a very high level. I'm going to turn it back over to Dan to talk a little bit more about some of the budgetary items that go into stormwater and managing the stormwater program.
So beyond the MS4 requirements, the other things that we need to think about, I mentioned earlier about the number of facilities in the town that are used to protect downstream property owners from flooding. Those are the ponds. Those ponds require annual inspections, annual maintenance, and in some cases, we're even looking at retrofitting some of those ponds to make them better and to function for both stormwater flooding and stormwater water quality. So that's all would benefit us in terms of our MS4 permit, but at the same time, sort of MS4 and flooding work together. If you're improving a pond, you can do both things with it. Other things that you can do with the stormwater utility are that you can do upgrades to your road. When you do your road program each year, there's a need to make sure that your catch basins are functioning properly. The pipes, any pipes that are in need of repair, anywhere where you need to add facilities to, again, capture water, maybe address some of the flooding issues. It can be used for those types of situations. It can also be used for operations. Again, inlet cleaning, repairs of and replacements of inlets, manholes, or pipes. There's usually emergency repairs. Every year there's always a project that comes out of nowhere that needs to be done immediately. So it's good to have some money set aside for that. Street sweeping, which is also a benefit to water quality and sediment reduction, it can be paid for out of a stormwater utility. And then the big one is stormwater pond maintenance. So in summary, things that we didn't think about before these mandates on our stormwater system that the town didn't have to think to budget for before. Again, we talked about MS4 compliance, pollution reduction projects, capital improvements because of the age of our system, and then, of course, flood control projects related to the frequency and the magnitude of some of the storms that we're feeling, especially in the past few years. So under slide 19 is a sample budget that you see that we put together. This budget was actually the one that was used for Hampton, but I think it's important just to recognize the categories, the way we break this down in the way that you can justify a stormwater utility fund. And there's administrative costs, of course. You have to have billing, you have to have support, both legal and technical support. There's database management to keep track of everything that you're doing in mapping. And then on the operations side of things, we talked about the repair, replacement, a road program, detention pond maintenance, and then capital improvements are just big projects that are out there. For instance, one of the bigger capital projects that we have coming up is the replacement of one of the bridges over Pine Creek. And that's a big project that's going to happen in the next few years. Then below the line from stormwater capital is stormwater quality. And that's where we talk about the MS4, PRP projects, facility inspection, street sweeping. And what we see, and we see the tendency of these programs where they're headed in the future, is that as you do capital projects, as these MS4 projects are completed further on, there's going to be more requirement from the federal government to do more pollution reduction. I don't know when we're going to see it, but I feel in my mind at some point in time, we will be doing some treatment of stormwater management. And I think it's good to become prepared for that and at least understand that, you know, federal permits don't get any easier. They always increase in their stringency as you do one thing, they say, okay, let's move to the next one. And it's sort of it gets you acclimated and gets you ready for the next part of it. When we first started this program, if you would have told me we were doing pollution reduction plans, I would have probably said, wow, it's really way out there. We're doing them now. So that's just the kind of thing that you can continue to expect. So with all these additional budgetary items that are being added on to the town in lieu of particularly raising taxes, some of the funding options that you look at, if you do raise taxes, it really doesn't equitably treat everybody that generates stormwater in the community. If you don't do anything and ignore the mandates, of course, you could have fines for not complying with your permit. You take on, litigation. You still need to mitigate and maintain your stormwater infrastructure. The better solution we see is implementing the stormwater utility fund. It takes tax exempt properties actually participate. There's a fair distribution of the fee, and then there's funding that's specifically set aside for stormwater. I think that's important because it has to be a sustained effort. So what is a stormwater utility in essence? It's a fee-based option that is founded on providing a service. In this case, it's the care and custody of stormwater, both collection, management, and pollution control. Property owners actually pay for an impervious area that creates stormwater runoff from their property. And then the municipality has the responsibility for providing care of that stormwater through operation and maintenance, collection and conveyance, and flood control and other things, all the way to the carrying stream that carries it out of the community. Tax exempt properties would participate. The only thing that's not included in impervious surface from a typical stormwater fee is the roads, and that just gets too complicated. I could go on about that, but essentially roads are left out of the equation. A number of these have been implemented across Pennsylvania, across the country. They're becoming more popular, especially with with the things that I've already talked about. Slide 22 is just, I think it's a good visual representation of the way people are used to doing funding problems. You have a minimum amount that you have to spend on your system each year, which is represented by the dashed lines. The little peaks that are shown on the curve as you go through there, those are places where maybe there was some flooding, there was some money thrown at a problem, there was a bond issue to do some work. But then what happens is, as quickly as the money is spent, it falls down again. If you have a user-based system, you have a good consistent effort, and as shown by the top line, you can actually be proactive with your system, do things that you need to do on a daily basis, year-to-year basis. And I've seen it work in other places. I've been involved in one community where there's been over 10 years worth of effort, and it really shows, especially when you have big rainfall events. So how is a fee established? Well, the fee is based upon impervious surface. And if you think about it, we call it an equivalent residential unit. And how we establish this, it's the median impervious surface that could be expected to be found on a residential lot in the town of McCandless. Pick the middle house that has the middle amount of impervious area. We measure that impervious area. We take a good sample size to determine what the median is. And then we determine how much impervious area is on that property. Pretty simple. How big is the house? How big are the driveways? And how much impervious area does that take up? The median, as I say, is the number. Typically, these range between 2,000 square feet and 3,500 square feet, and that's established as one equivalent residential unit. So how do you handle non-residential units? That would be all the commercial properties, anybody else that generates impervious area that has a parking lot, a bigger lot for an apartment building. Those are established by actually taking their impervious surface, determining that through actually going and examining each property, determining the impervious surface, then dividing by what is that median number or the equivalent residential unit for the town. So when you do both those things, you know the number of residential properties you have, you know how much you have from non-residential properties. You then can take your budget that you've established in the slide that I've shown before, and you could establish what would be justified in terms of a stormwater fee that you would charge for this service. Now, just as an example, we were able to just do some very preliminary work in the town, and we determined that there's approximately 10,600 residential parcels. There's approximately 460 non-residential parcels. And just using the fee as charged by Hampton Township, which is $9.58 per month, and applying that to both the residential parcels and the non-residential parcels, assuming that the non-residential parcels would have approximately 10 per property, the annual revenue that could be developed by a fee such as this is about $1.75 million per year. Approximately 1.2 on the residential side and 529 on the non-residential side. Now, again, this is just an example. We have to go through a pretty strenuous due diligence to first justify the budgets and then determine the actual numbers that this would be. This is just to give you an idea. And we're not saying that we recommend any number at this point. That's just a number that's charged by a neighboring community. So I'm not saying that's the number that I would recommend for McCandless. Again, it's just an example. So the other part of establishing any utility is that you have to provide a credit if somebody's not using your system. And the analogy that I give is that if you have a swimming pool, you use water, but at the same time, you usually get charged a sewage fee for that because your sewage fee is based upon your water usage. But people will have deduct meters to determine how much water is going to the pool. They get a credit for that off of their sewage. In this case, what we're doing is we're saying hey, a part of any stormwater program, there's two major components. One is flood control, and the second part of it is our operations and our pollution control on MS4 and everything else. So typically, you'll find that there will be a credit established for up to 50% of the fee for flood attenuation or other requirements. That requires an annual inspection, making sure that people are being good stewards of their systems, that they just don't have systems that they don't maintain. The credits are only, in a lot of manuals, are only good for a certain period of time until you provide a report that your system is operating properly. So that's the case where you would, in order to really establish something, because people are going to say, well, listen, I have a stormwater pond. Why am I being charged this whole fee? So we have a way to deal with that. And my experience in the systems that we've worked on is if you establish a fair credit manual, some people will take advantage of that. Some people say, hey, I don't really care about it. I just want to pay the fee and I'm onward. So that's just our experience. So we helped implement three different utilities at this point in time. We did one in Mount Lebanon in 2011. We did Whitehall, and then we recently did Hampton. Those fees range from 96 to 115. The non-residential units vary by the community. I think there'll be a lot more non-residential ERUs once we get into really, if we would look at the town itself. School districts, the municipality, and all nonprofits such as churches would pay the fee. Credits are provided, as we talked about. There's been really no significant challenges brought over these fees that have been implemented at this point in time. And some communities have used that capital money to make improvements that have significantly addressed stormwater in their community. They're now focusing on MS4 requirements, which is the second part of this. And so it is a good tool. The next step in anything like this would be to really just do a further evaluation, and that's what I would recommend. Sort of, does it make sense for the town? What are the real numbers? What could you generate? What is your real stormwater backlog? Again, we've made approximations at this point, and then you can decide again if you want to go further with it. That's sort of the step-by-step process, rather than diving in full force and saying we want to do this. You sort of take it step by step, and that's our recommendation. So with that, we would open it up to any questions.
Madam President, I had a question.
Just go ahead, David.
Going back, and I know this is just an example, but going back to the cost summary, for the capital improvements, it looks like it starts close to 700,000 a year, goes up to getting close to 800,000 a year. Is that something that's anticipated to be in perpetuity, or is it like a 5-year plan of capital improvements?
It's really a 5-year plan that's updated annually. And again,
what I mean by that is so a plan like Hampton's, for example, would we see that capital improvement line on the budget from here to eternity? Or is that here's we know we would need to do this much in capital improvements to make the system, to get the system up to a certain level, but after that, we don't anticipate major capital improvements every year?
I think in the case of Hampton, I think that they had a number of stormwater retrofits that they were planning to do to a number of different stormwater facilities. So those were supposed to carry out beyond the 5 years. I think at some point, you're correct, it would taper down. And again, that's something that we would work with the town on, looking at what the true capital budget is. And again, that's a big number, and that affected their fee. So if that number is less, or it can be spaced over a longer period of time, it can keep the fee, down further to actually keep keep things going and continue the program as the way you see fit. So that's part of the process. And the first step is to really sit down and have a hard line and really understand your budget in terms of what your projects are.
Right. And I mean, I guess part of what I'm also asking with that is if it's viewed as something that's in perpetuity, then there really aren't any alternative funding mechanisms other than some kind of fee or whatever. But if it's something where it's a short-term burst of capital improvements, and then we don't see the need for that kind of capital improvements annually, then it can be, well, okay, do we want to decide to do a fee, or do we want to do a bond issue? Or, it opens up more possibilities if that is not a capital improvement fee year over year, for a long time. So that's just kind of part of what I'm wondering, I guess.
My experience, though, in the other utilities that we've worked with is that you'd be surprised that once you start doing this, you start developing a project list and you start really looking at your system in depth, that list never ends. The number might go down some in terms of what you can spend, but it stays consistent. There's always projects that need to be done because the system continues to age. The challenges related to, again, the size of the system make it such that there's a lot of work. Again, flooding projects always bring into play that if you want to go in and address flooding in a particular area, it costs a lot of money to do that, or you want to go into a neighborhood, retrofit something. Those are the things that people start to come out with when you have a fund like this, and they say, can you help us take care of this? Whereas before, we might not have been able to do that because we're struggling just to maintain the normal infrastructure that you have. That's the best way I can describe it.
Dan, if I can add to that, the earlier in Dan's presentation, or I think it was actually Ryan that mentioned that we do anticipate that the next permit cycle will include more stringent regulations that we all have to adhere to. We don't have a cost necessarily attached to those regulations. I mean, every indication is that there will be more stringent regulations. We will have to comply, as we have been trying to comply. The other thing that I would add to what Dan just mentioned is that once we go through a cycle of trying to get what I would call the low-hanging fruit, retrofitting ponds that are in existence and doing stream bank restorations where we were aware of issues, where there were sedimentation issues, then with this fee, the town can go into those areas that did not have stormwater controls that are older and look at property that we may have available in order to be able to address stormwater and better control water in places that never were controlled before. So I think, I would encourage the council to keep that in mind, that this will be ongoing. This isn't a matter of spending $5 million and you're done. It's a matter of continually chipping away at what needs to be addressed.
Mike, I think you had.
Yeah, I had a couple. Dan, does any communities exempt seniors or those on fixed incomes, or it's a uniform fee? What have you seen?
It's a uniform fee.
It's a uniform fee. Okay. What sort of upfront costs are there there's thousands of parcels that someone needs to analyze?
Yeah, we don't analyze every parcel. We take a sampling of the residential. So out of, I think, 13,000 parcels that we recognize as residential, we wouldn't look at every one of those. Everybody is charged a uniform rate as a residential structure, no matter if I'm this size or this size, because in my humble opinion, you don't want to create controversy within your residential. You want everybody that has a residential property to pay the same. And that's why you pick the median, the right in the middle. There's that many people below it, there's that many people above it. So you strike the median. And you charge one rate for residential. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, but there's upfront costs. to get-
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, the upfront costs.
You don't, yeah, I guess that's hard to quantify.
No, I mean, the upfront costs are really just, from our perspective, we've done 3 of these and it's really just the time that it takes to examine all the commercial properties and actually calculate the ARUs, actually working with the agency that's going to bill it, working with Steve to make sure that it's all legal. You have the ordinance in place that you need to do. So there's a number of steps that need to go about it, but you can actually use the fee to actually pay for that implementation as you get off the ground. So I think even in this example, we throw a little bit higher number in the administrative cost to begin with, to pay for it up front.
Is there likelihood of legal action? Like the communities you mentioned, Mount Lebanon, Hampton, et cetera, those are pretty affluent communities. Are you like the less affluent communities, the government will actually go after the Duquesnes, the Clairtons of the world that are.
Oh, you mean for MS4 requirements?
Yeah.
You're subject to, $10,000 a day fines per the Clean Streams Act if you don't comply with your permit. So the clients that we represent, some of them are so small, they're exempt. You have to be of a certain size and population density to be required to have the permit. But a lot of the smaller towns along the river and stuff like that, they have combined systems. So they're more interplayed in with another permit, that they actually get a permit as a combined system, stormwater, and they have to do minimum controls also, but they pay for it more out of their sanitary sewer fund, if that makes sense, because it's a combined system.
What sort of problem do we see down the road? Like how much do we spend on stormwater maintenance now? Do you have
We're spending between $800,000 and $1 million per year.
And in 5 years, do you have a guess on where that might be?
In 5 years, what we're going to be facing, I believe, is that we're, given the current situation that we have with funding through tax base that is growing at best case scenario around 3% per year. We're keeping up, and we're not able to go above and beyond. So it could well be that we're going to be paying that amount of money in 5 years. We may not be getting as much for our dollar in that time, or we make a concerted effort towards stormwater at the expense of something else. There will be choices that we would need to make, whatever the priorities of the council are at that time. And I would say, I'm going to say it this way, I think the town of McCandless has done a very admirable job over the years with compliance to the MS4 regulations and upgrading sewer systems where they needed to. We are now at the point where that $800,000 a year, that $1 million a year, we're complying with the regulations. We're meeting those requirements, but we aren't taking that next step to solve a flooding problem. We're not taking that next step to actually get ahead of the curve with compliance areas for sediment, for stormwater. I mean, if we control sediment, we control flooding, because that's simple fact. So in my mind, and please keep in mind that I've been dealing with stormwater issues, MS4 regulations I'm not gonna say as long as Dan, but we're probably pretty comparable in terms of our experience factor. And, you know, there were reasons why legislation was passed to create this. There was a recognition that there needed to be funding sources, and that tax exempt properties in the communities are contributing to stormwater. They're benefiting from stormwater controls. And like any other fee, they pay that fee based on, you know, their usage or their benefit that they would get. But my approach, my true hope is that we can look at this and find a way, whether it's a stormwater utility, heaven forbid, a tax increase, or offsets of other expenses, that we can better address stormwater. You know, this is the one alternative that we wanted to bring up because we thought it was the most fair alternative to the community. You know, I've been through the implementation of a fee. I was through legislation to allow the fee to occur in second-class townships. So I'm well versed in the process. And, you know, there's a lot of back and forth that would occur. You know, what Dan is talking about, just starting the further evaluation, that tells us what a fee might be, how we would try to deal with capital improvements, and that we can make that determination. What, you know, do we want to look at something over a 5-year time period or potentially a 7-year time period? You know, what is our comfort level? You know, we've, you know, what does that fee look like? Is it a lower fee that will take us longer to get there, or is it a more moderate fee? I'm certainly not advocating what Hampton did, because our situation is different than Hampton. Nor am I advocating what North Fayette Township did when we implemented the fee out there. So rather than continue this diatribe that I seem to be on.
Yeah.
I've never talked this much, have I?
Tell us how you really
Yeah. I know.
Do you care about this?
No, I do care. I truly do care, because I don't want the people in the town to have to suffer any longer than they need. And this is one way to start addressing it. And I'll get off my soapbox.
Any other questions? Yes.
One quick question. Is this a lienable fee on property owners, as a water sewer bill would be, or is this something like your Duquesne light bill would
Yeah,
be?
most ordinances are set up with a lien provision, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, and I have another question. In these costs, like the sample you have of Hampton Township, does that include management and personnel at the town level, or is there an additional burden to the town for implementing these projects and designs that would need to be budgeted for?
No, what you can actually use the fee for, and I've seen people do it, is you can pay for a part of your town salaries for personnel, and, you know, it could be public works or whatever, to do certain projects and pay for them out of the fee. It also opens up more money to do roads and other things that you need if you have the stormwater component handled somewhere else, because if you don't have good drainage, you don't have good roads. So you can use it for most anything. You can use it for stormwater equipment. You can use it for, you know, really anything associated with stormwater at all. Street sweeping, we already talked about. So again, it's versatile. Labor, equipment, outside contracting, grants. You can use it for match money for grants to further take the money further. I've seen people use it for. You can use it to pay back a bond issue. So again, there's many things that you can do with it.
And I have one more question. You know, presenting this, Bob may need to clarify. Is this being presented by Gateway to continue manage? Or would this be something if there was another engineering firm working with our town 5-10 years from now? Will things have to change up completely under a different partner?
They, it would not have to change up. Whether the town was doing more work with staff, whether Gateway was here, or whether a different engineering firm was here, that the ball would just be picked up and taken further.
So there wouldn't be a contract that was above and beyond whatever is existing with our current partners on that?
No, we would just be doing a bit more each year within the framework that we're already working.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Sponholz.
Mine is more of a comment because I wanted to hear questions, and so I wanted to kind of bring this home since this is part of the work of the Stormwater subcommittee that we set up, which I'm on. So just to very briefly recap, McCandless already has an aging infrastructure, and we just do. Then we add on to it the unfunded mandates of MS4 that nobody expected, and we know are going to increase potentially significantly in 2023. We know that we have flooding issues in this town. We do not have a budget that can endeavor to start major projects that can make a material difference in getting to the root causes of the flooding in our watersheds. We need to do something proactive, and I think we need to do something differently. And I think this is a path forward. In addition, I love our institutional neighbors in this town, but they benefit from all the services, and the infrastructure. And in this case, I think it would be wonderful if they could work with the rest of the residents to contribute to solutions to these problems. So I just want to also remind everybody who's listening or will listen to this, is not to get carried away by what the example was in this particular presentation. We wanted to base it on a real scenario, but until we take the next step, we do not know what might be a recommendation, which could be balanced depending on what the council and the community wants at that time. We need at this time, and that's why I wanted to just kind of bring it home, is we need a relatively small amount of engineering fees in order to take this project, if you will, this concept to the next level, which would be to be able to bring back to council, to the residents, a proposal that is based on real-time data, real budgets, real needs. So that I am looking, as a council member, all we're looking for tonight is, I think, what would amount to a head nod to do the next step of engineering work so that we can work as quickly as possible to bring a final concept back for consideration.
And what would that proposal entail? What would be
The
the
amount of
cost?
money,
What would be the cost?
we're estimating $20,000.
Dan, how much time would be involved? And how would that take to be able to come back then to council?
Say 60 days. Yeah,
And what would be coming back would be what you saw here for Hampton, only specific for us.
correct.
Okay, so it would be the plan or the
Yes,
proposed plan that could be
Yes.
altered, but it would be your best representation of what that plan would look like.
correct.
One last quick question, if I can.
Councilmember Smith?
And it's, you don't even really have to answer it. I'm just asking if it's possible. I know when you were talking before, you kind of split it just into two groups, residential and commercial. But is there any utility to dividing that further? You know, R1 versus R3, or, whatever the case may be. I just don't know, is there a vast difference between what would be attributed to somebody living in a condo for their impervious surface area versus somebody who lives in a single family home on a lot. I just don't know if that's something that can be looked at or would be worth looking at.
I will comment on that briefly. I think what you'll find is, in the example that you give, is that we term residential and non-residential. Non-residential includes anything other than single family. I think we started duplexes or townhouses, and really like condos and apartment buildings. Anything else beyond that, anything that has a roof and a parking lot. So if I live in a condominium, the condominium would be technically charged for its impervious surface, that being the roof and the parking lot. How the condominium distributes the cost of that particular fee that's applied to them, to their individual residents, I think it would be divided by the number of condominiums that are in the complex. So it doesn't work out to be as significant as, there's not really a difference there. We struggled with this in a little bit in another community with thinking about having the different R districts that are different, but I really think if you focus just on residential and non-residential, thinking about those examples, single family lots, you really, in my opinion, you really don't want to differentiate. That's why you take the median, and it's worked out. There hasn't been challenges on it in my experience. And this has been kind of sort of tried and proven that way. Once you start to differentiate, then you have to analyze every one of those 13,000 parcels. When somebody puts an addition on their house, are you going to charge them more? Do they fall into another category? You sort of make once you make this complicated, it's not worth doing.
Oh, no, and I'm not saying individually analyze every lot. I'm just saying, R1 versus R3, versus R6, does it make sense to draw lines there, not on a lot by lot basis or anything?
Right, you distinguish between residential, take those zones and sort of analyze a group of homes within that particular zone and determine what their equivalent residential unit is.
Right.
Yeah. But then it gets complicated in how you apply that ERU to the non-residential from there, because it's not uniform. So it just makes it a little more complicated. More than glad to look at it and come back to you to see if it makes any difference. We could even sample some different areas and sort of show you that maybe what the medians are in both of those areas, just so you have the information.
Yeah,
no problem with doing that.
My only concern would be, I just wouldn't want, somebody who is renting a condo to get hit with, through their landlord to get hit with an apartment, or who buys a condo to get hit with a, exponentially larger fee than a single family home, or vice versa, just because of the classification. So to me, it's kind of more, somebody's living there, that's their house, whether it's a condo, townhouse, whatever. So that's just my concern with that. That's all I'm saying.
I think the law that allows a municipality to charge a stormwater utility fee requires that it be an equitable fee for all.
Correct.
And I think that's the interpretation has been almost unilaterally to do what Dan suggested. Find a median residential unit and then follow through with that number.
But we can give some comparisons in the DIM study just to make council feel comfortable. That's good, just information to have.
So our next step would be to, if council is ready to decide this tonight, I know this is kind of the first explanation while we've had this presentation, the first explanation we've gotten. So if council wants to kind of wait and think about it and come back next meeting with more questions, or if you're like, this is a great idea, let's go ahead and give a nod for the fee and for, to get the actual numbers that would apply to us. So I'd like to hear from you all.
I think what I'm just gonna say what I'm both asking for and advocating for is for council, for head nod to take the next step, which will get us to a place where we're actually talking about specifically McCandless data. And I think there will be plenty of opportunity once we get that to see if there's fine tuning more of these questions that we can deal with. I think that we have talked about this actually for a very long time. This isn't the first time we've talked about this in council. And I'd like to see this process continue to a point where council and our residents can make a fully informed decision on whether this is the right direction for our town.
Other comments? We ready to decide this? Yes.
I don't know if I'm there yet, ready yet to move forward. I
Okay.
think there's low cost or free information out there by meeting with the municipalities that have done this to see what their pain points were, why they chose this and not another. And two, I don't know if all of the residents yet understand how big of an issue it is. So is there a way to have some education or something beyond this to educate people to say, okay, yes, it's okay to invest money in looking at this.
Okay. Can I hear from some other council members?
Kim, I had one comment too. I know for me, and I'm sure for all of our wards, they're diverse from, we have homes in my ward that have 950 square foot ranch homes up to 6, 7, 8,000 square foot homes. I understand the challenges of, trying to figure out square footage and, the different measurements for each property. But I also, that's just one thing about the fee that kind of bothers me is someone who has maybe a 10,000 square foot driveway in a very large home compared to someone who may have a gravel driveway in a 950 square foot home. I just don't think that's a fair way to, I guess, implement this fee. But if there's a way that they could fine tune that, that'd be great. But I definitely agree we need to get this moving. I do like the idea and everything, but I'm not too sure about the fee process right now.
Does that mean this is a nod to move forward with them going ahead and getting the specifics from McCandless to us, or you want to wait? What are you, or
No, I think they should definitely get the specifics to us and go from there.
Okay. Public comment was already at the beginning of the meeting. I'm sorry. Tricia.
I was just I think this problem's not going away. And all evidence leads us to believe that it's probably only going to get worse. It impacts not just McCandless, it also impacts many of our neighbors downstream as well. I think that if there was an awesome solution that other municipalities wouldn't be able to keep it a secret by now, and we'd be doing it. So I am in support of moving forward at this time.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, I'm still thinking through it. In general, I am in favor of getting kind of specifics of what it would be. At the same time, in the back of my head, I'm also just kicking around, what the alternatives are. I think Councilmember Clunin is right. This problem isn't going to go away. I also think Councilmember Charles is right, where I'm curious to know about what other municipalities, why other municipalities have chosen this path or another path if there are municipalities such as a bond issue or, a new inter-municipality authority even, parallel to MTSA, something like that, which is, completely inaccurately named. MTSA covers way more than McCandless Township, if people don't know that. So I think that I would give the thumbs up to hear this, because it sounds like Bob and other folks, have looked at this a lot. But I do want to keep, like Councilmember Tarl said, I would like to learn a little bit more about what the other options may be, because however it shakes out at the end of the day, an authority ends up being, extra money out of our citizens' pockets. And it could very well be needed. It probably is needed, but it has to be, to me, it just has to be a very deliberative process if we're going to hit people with a new yearly bill.
Was that a go forward with the
that is a
$20,000 assessment?
That's a go forward with that, but I'd also like to hear more info about other potential avenues as well, and the pros and cons and whatever.
Is that a go forward?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, that's a go forward. Okay, all right. So that is majority. So we're moving forward with the information that your recommendation. All right. Okay. You're welcome. All right. Reports from committees. Public Safety Committee.
Ooh, I'm up. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first up, we have Chief's report. Is Ryan? Oh, there we go.
I think we have a special presentation this evening.
Very briefly, ma'am, very briefly. Good evening, everyone. Do we need a break? 5 minutes. Before you this evening, we have a young man, Preston Mcguire. And I'll tell you folks, I'll direct you to the last paragraph of my report for the reason why. Briefly, September 22nd during the evening hours, there was an elderly woman with some medical issues stepped from her vehicle, wandered into the woods off Babcock Boulevard. Her adult daughter called the police. Officer Gainey responded. They were searching for this woman. Unable to find her, Preston was in the area with his father. Does that sound right, buddy? Saw a body laying in the weeds near the woods. Believe it must have been rainy, maybe a bit chilly that evening. He saw the police searching the area. He told his dad about it. They called 911. And when my officers responded, I believe these gentlemen took them to the area. We recovered the elderly woman. She cold, wet, but otherwise had her basic health. And I think that I asked Preston to come here tonight so we could recognize him in front of council. I believe his actions and his observations are commendable. And so Officer Gainey's here since he was involved that evening to present him with an award.
So reading the Town of McCandless Award of Recognition. This award is presented to Preston Mcguire by the McCandless Police Department on October 11, 2021, in recognition of helping the McCandless Police locate an unwell elderly woman who ran into the woods, and it's signed Ryan P. Hawk, Chief of Police. So there you go, Ryan.
Thank you.
And, Preston. Good job,
Prime example of see something, say something.
Yeah.
Preston, you got anything? Thank you for the few moments, folks.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Anyone have any other questions about my report?
Nope. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have the fire marshal's report for the month of August 2021 and permit report for September 2021.
Those have been submitted. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
No questions or comments? Okay. Next up, code enforcement's violations complaint statistics report for the month of September 2021.
Again, that was submitted to council. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I had one. We've had some grass cutting complaints in my ward.
Mhm.
And then I was told of the process where when you notify them, it takes whatever, 10 days. You notify them again, it takes 10 days, and you post it takes 7. Why does it take 27 days to have that process? Did we set that time frame? Can we speed it up? Or
We
is that
can't
like
speed that.
legislated by?
We can
another
speed
law?
that up by at least 10 days.
Is there anything the council needs to do, or that's an internal process, or?
I don't believe that there's anything the council needs to do, but if there is, I'll get back to you.
So we're gonna then change those sort of reporting timeframes or.
Yeah, we have to give them at least that first 10-day window to comply, and then we could sign.
I don't want to go in this blind. Is there a reason why it's like that for other properties? I don't know, Steve, have you seen?
Yeah, well, you have to give the opportunity for them to appeal the violation, right? Because we're making a determination that they violated the town's ordinances, and so they have a right to appeal. And so you have to let that time period run. And then once it runs, you can move towards citation. You know, we can talk about going in and actually cutting the grass and leaving the property if you wanted to do something like that, a little more aggressive. I think the way it happens now, Bob, and correct me if I'm wrong, we send a letter or notification to the resident that your property needs, the grass needs cut. And if you don't, you could face a notice of violation. So that's like a 10-day warning, and then the notice of violation goes, and they have 10 days to file.
There's an additional 7.
The 7 is the question, because we can go immediately from that second to a citation.
If there's no appeal filed, we can issue a citation, we can go in and cut the grass. Depending on which way.
A question on that too. And I don't read it closely enough to know if this is the case or not, but it seems like there are repeat offenders. If it's a repeat violation, is there any way to cut out the first notice and say you have been noticed of this before?
You can always start at the notice of violation step. You don't always have to send the courtesy 10-day letter. So, and even on a repeat offender, Council Member Smith, you still have to notify them because it's a new violation, right? If they've rectified it in June and then by August they haven't cut their grass again, that's a new violation. So you have to give them the 10 days to file the appeal.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is maybe we give that courtesy letter to somebody or to a property that's not on the list all the time. But to somebody who's on the list all the time, you get rid of the courtesy letter.
I mean, my experience with the grass issue is that there's usually, somebody can't cut the grass because they're elderly or ill. There's nobody living there. And those folks you might want to treat differently than someone that is able to cut the grass but refuses for whatever reason. Yeah, I like the personal approach on these things where you can analyze the situation, decide what the appropriate course of action is, because you just don't know until the code officer takes a look at it. But you can be as aggressive or as standard with the extra warning letter as the situation would dictate. I don't know how else to explain it. It just depends. I hate to use the lawyer answer, it depends.
But we can speed that up as much as we can.
On repeat offenders, you could go right to the notice of violation, sure.
Bob, I have a quick question. Do you know why, Kim had pointed this out, the properties for Perrymont and Malbrand, why they're not listed on these?
Those aren't being handled through the the code enforcement program with Mr. Vincent. We're handling those just as a result of the demolition and zoning violations. So we wouldn't necessarily list those because of that. It's just been processed here over time.
Okay, because I guess I don't understand why it wouldn't be since last January and March when all the complaints started coming in, why they weren't listed.
Again, that was a result of a demolition permit application. And
No, I'm talking about the buffer.
No, and I'm saying that the cutting of that buffer yard is a zoning violation, and but the town did not, as a routine, record those types of complaints. We handled them, but they weren't part of a report because they didn't fall neatly into a building permit matter or a property maintenance code violation. They were a different type of violation.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments? Can you guys see me?
No, but we can hear you.
I'm sorry.
I can see you.
My whole screen.
We
just
can't
like-
see you.
No, it's okay. My whole screen just disappeared, but oh wow, I don't know what happened. Okay. Okay, so next up, Personnel Board. Does anyone have questions, comments? Nope. Okay, moving on to the Volunteer Firefighter Steering Committee. No meeting, but they are looking at hosting a meeting probably at the beginning of November. The Police Community Engagement Ad Hoc Committee. 2 weeks ago, Chief Ryan Hawk and our department had a Coffee with Cops event with Ross. As you could see in the report, everything was a wonderful turnout. They're still trying to partner up with some other events coming up with Ross, but that was a great turnout. And we still currently have the Citizen Academy going on. They're actually halfway through that right now. And it seems to be going really well. And all 17 of the attendees who started from the beginning are still attending, so that's a good sign. Any questions or comments about that? Can you guys hear me?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Facilities management.
First, we have the Public Works Activity Report. Anyone have any questions of the report? Hearing none, seeing none. Environmental Advisory Committee.
So what the minutes of the last meeting are in council's packet. What we do have for council this evening is the proposed final version of what the EAC put together, the landscape planning guide for the town of McCandless. Personally, I think they did a very nice job on that. It's not overwhelming, but it's informational for, I think, both developers, business owners, as well as residents. So the head nod I would be looking for tonight is that council's permission to go ahead and formally send this over for planning commission, not as a law or a resolution, but simply as a tool for planning commission to share with developers when they come in. We've suggested that it might be of interest and value to our residents by perhaps even putting it into our 2022 calendar. And, you know, just generally sharing it. It's not a law, it's not a rule, but it's some really good information on native plants and non-invasive species. And it would benefit the town at large if more people were aware of some of this information. So that would be the head nod that I'm requesting, Madam President.
My head is nodding. How is everyone else? Are there Zoom people's head nodding?
My head is nodding, and I think it's important to remember that this is stuff that like developers were looking for guidance on. This isn't just, hey, we want to, dictate everything that goes on. This was, we got the same questions over and over and over again as to what was, preferred. And I think you guys did a phenomenal job putting that together.
It looks like it's a go.
Thank you.
Next up, the technology committee.
This is my, I've taken this over from former council member Woods. I will say, great committee. Had my first meeting with them. They're diligently working on enterprise software, website upgrades, etc. So, but their last minutes, their September minutes are in council's file. So if you have any questions, let me know, but I'm not quite sure that I could answer too many of them at this juncture.
Keep an eye on McCandless and me. It looks like they're going to open up some suggestions there for updating the town website. I think the chair of that, Marcy Pearson, is going to be assembling all those ideas together. So there's going to be a place for community to input. We have a lot of tech people in McCandless to put in some of their ideas to help improve our website. I think that's coming up too.
Good. Lastly, the stormwater management ad hoc committee. I think we have the presentation tonight. Is there
I think it's pretty clear.
That's enough of that.
But we are, just for the record, we have continued to make some progress in getting final information and numbers or close to final on the North Meadows Basin upgrade, as well as pursuing some other opportunities for the potential for basin upgrades. So more work needs to be done.
Those are reports.
Services committee.
Council member Smith, the sanitary authority.
Yep, the minutes for the last sanitary authority or the last sanitary authority minutes that we have because of timing. I think there was one meeting. But they're in your packet. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. No.
No questions. We'll move on. The ambulance authority, the financials through August, and the August minutes are in council's packet. Are there any questions?
Quick question, and this is probably for Bob. Have they ever provided the information that we requested a year ago?
No.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that they didn't follow up their ask for money with the information that we requested quite a while ago.
Okay. Council member Smith, the Public Library Authority.
The latest minutes are in your packet, as well as the executive director's report. The big thing going on, right now, and the agenda. But the big thing going on right now is obviously their budgeting process. In the last meeting, they resubmitted the budget based off of numbers from 2019 with a 3% increase. That was the last thing that came out of the library, I believe. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
Hearing none, that concludes the Services Committee report.
Moving on to old business. Is there anyone has any old business? Right, moving on to new business. Bob, do you want us to give us a little short explanation of this?
Sure. And I will say that Bob Lucas from the library is here in case there's any questions that come up that I can't answer. The library has been working for some time on the idea of renovating what you call the front porch area, lower level entry of the facility, and that will include the actual entrance, where you go up onto that porch area, the front doors and such. And they are submitting an application to the state for funding of that project. Part of the requirement of the grant is that all of the participating municipalities approve a resolution indicating their continued support of the library for the useful life of that renovation, or 50 years. So I wouldn't see that that would be any problem in terms of the number of years. I mean, the useful life would probably match that. And this would just be that we are going to continue to participate as supporting the library during that period of time. Am I close to right?
That's
Okay.
exactly it. And, I have the resolution here for those passed. If I could get some signatures on that.
Are there any questions?
Is
This one.
this, so this is typical? I guess,
For
is
the-
this
For
typical?
this type of grant application, this would be typical.
Okay.
They
This
want
isn't
to
unusual.
ensure that the library will be in existence for that period of time.
We did the same thing 2 years ago for the same grant program, with the HVAC and roof project that we did. So, you know, unfortunately, if that one isn't any good, you know, each application has to have a new resolution.
And it isn't unusual, like applications that we submit, that we have to show that we are going to be able to fund a project or for life over the
Okay,
period.
I'm fine,
This is
fine. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't
We had to
unusual.
do this before the last time they got some money, just like a year, 2 years ago, something like that, 2 years ago.
So
Councilmember,
it's just procedural. It's not like if something happens in 45 years, the library's not, so Steve, like, yeah,
no,
we're
no,
done.
we're booked for 50 years. That's it. Any other questions?
And this, well, if I remember what Amy told me correctly, the actual project itself would be contingent on getting the grant. If the grant wasn't received, the project won't move forward, at least at this point.
Right, that's correct. The project as we envision it now moves the stairway that's inside the building up to this new structure on the outside. The problem that we're trying to address and take advantage of to gain that additional space inside is that the patio is actually pulling away from the building and it's creating a safety issue. So we have to do that either way. And if we can get the funding through the grant program, we would like to also construct this, enclosure that would have the stairway relocated and then redo the interior.
Any more questions? Hearing none, the floor is open for a motion.
Motion to approve tentatively identified resolution number 16 of 2021 of the municipalities of Borough, Bradford Woods, Borough of Franklin Park, Township of Marshall, Town of McCandless, Township of Ross, County of Allegheny, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, ensuring the undisturbed use of the Northland Public Library for 50 years or the useful life of the grant, whichever is shorter.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second,
Councilmember Smith. Second opportunity for questions or comments. Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. B is a housekeeping matter. Bob, you want to give a short,
Sure.
another?
The state annually provides municipal pension funds to the town. And as part of that distribution of funds, the town can make a decision in terms of where that money goes between the various pension plans that it operates. In oftentimes in the past, it's been split between a couple of plans. This year, after looking at the overall framework, you will see that all of the money is being distributed into the police pension plan. Bottom line is that regardless of how we split the money up, we still have to pay the same total amount of money to pension funds. It's just a matter of how we focus it. So the town funds will be focused in other areas as a result of this.
Questions about that? Hearing none, the floor is open for a motion.
Madam President, I will move to approve tentatively identified resolution number 17 of 2021, authorizing the allocation of general municipal pension system aid.
Is there a second? Okay, Councilmember Swiger. Second chance, questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Bob, you can speak to this, or I can speak to this. I think we talked about it in public comment.
I think the one thing that I wanted, well, 2 points that I wanted to bring up. One is that the grant application that we would be submitting would be to have this project fully funded by the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County. The second point that I wanted to make, that this is being applied for as a result of a recommendation that was submitted as part of the Pit Capstone project when they looked at energy efficiency for the town hall and the surrounding area. It was one thing that they noted in talking with Representative Mercury's office. They asked me whether there was any recreational related items that could this money might be used for, and this project came to mind. Why we wrote it up the way we did.
Were there any other recreational things like the trail at Wild Park or anything that were considered for this?
We could make an amendment and do that. I mean, we weren't doing anything with Wall Park only because we were waiting to hear back on the other grant applications.
I have to agree that I believe it was Mr. Camerata who made the comment that $450,000 for baseball field lighting seems extraordinary to me. And is it more lighting? Is it all the outdoor lighting around the?
It would be replacing the lighting on the 6 poles that are out.
By the way, I don't know, that's stadium type. That's stadium type lighting, which I'm admittedly not familiar with, but
this was simply one idea. I'm not.
Well, because I appreciate that if those aren't energy efficient fixtures, I'm sure they're eating a lot of electricity and costing a lot of money to operate. But for me, something like that, kind of like a prequel to agree to support a $450,000 grant application is kind of like, you know, what's the ROI? What's the return on investment? When, like, what's the payback on that? Just because of valuation, because if it's only going to save the town, you know, I don't know what, $5,000 a year in energy. I personally would say that I think that there are probably more substantive, meaningful, necessary projects that could be pursued for this
And we
significant amount of
can't
money.
undertake any infrastructure project that the town would want to take on undertake. We cannot do anything with buildings. We cannot do anything with equipment or vehicles. But we can undertake.
It's gotta be
It could be recreational. It could be other types of infrastructure. It can be stormwater.
You say it can be?
It can be stormwater. I focused
You know
on
where I would vote.
I focused on recreation only because it was mentioned to me when I was speaking to Representative McGuire's office.
What's the deadline on this?
The deadline's the 27th of October.
How often do we even use the field in the evenings? How many games are in play down there?
At times the field's used daily or nightly.
Councilmember Plenty.
As liaison to the Activities Advisory Committee, I'm a little disappointed that this was never presented as an option to those members serving on the Activities Advisory Committee, especially in consideration that, you know, one of the hopes for this committee is that they take on a more advisory role and not just plan small events. I would hope that this kind of thing with this sort of budget could be presented and up for discussion by the Activities Advisory Committee in the future.
Councilmember Taro.
Yes, we have too short of a deadline. I was going to advocate for, could we be presented with multiple options
That's
for
what-
the 450,000? And
That's,
then we can build a consensus on, but it's like we're up against. the
The
deadline,
win-
so,
the window
Yeah.
opened prior to, or just after our last meeting. This was my only chance to get anything in front of you.
Bob, does it leave you enough time if we do this at the next meeting? Because the next meeting's the 25th, right?
No,
no,
Okay.
I mean, if you, my recommendation would be that if you would want to do something that is more stormwater related, that you vote to amend the resolution. Trying to think if we could even get a project.
Would it have to be tied, if we use it for stormwater, does it have to be tied to a specific location?
Yes,
What was the one that was mentioned today that we know we have to do in the very near future?
North Meadows.
North Meadows.
it's not enough money. We need a project that's at least $250,000.
We don't own the Pine Creek Preserve property. We haven't had that donated yet. That would be right in this amount of money.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to throw something out there. So is it, because I don't know how these work, so I certainly would not want to be anything but honest, transparent, and do things correctly, but we talked about just recently the idea that we happen to have grant money that was dedicated for a certain particular project. And then for a variety of reasons, we haven't yet changed our mind. So is it a matter of we need to get something in for the grant? I mean, it could be, I don't know, is there another recreational project? Is there anything that is, future on stormwater that we could we apply for if the preserve, could we use that in anticipation of this, and then come back at a later date if for whatever reason that didn't happen, and say, we'd like to reallocate this to this other project now.
It is possible to reallocate.
But is in the first instance, in anticipation of this project,
have to
because
be
we
able to
do have the numbers and
we
we
have-
do have the drawings,
We have to
control it.
control the property.
Darn.
And there's nothing to say that we have to make a submission. This is,
I mean, $450,000, no matching is pretty
Yeah.
hard to want to walk
Sure.
away from.
there's
It's
no
not, it's
doubt.
not guaranteed though.
No,
No,
Yeah, well, we'll make a submission. There's. uh, Let's,
I mean, I think part of my thinking was that, we had a situation down on Vesta where we had to replace one pole. And that was, the pole and the lighting itself was $30,000 just to replace that one pole down there. You're talking hundreds of dollars per bulb, when we're replacing these. So I mean, it's an expensive proposition to have field lighting.
outside lighting all around the municipal building, including Dublin, all the Dublin area, are they all updated to LED?
No,
Bob, what does this grant have to relate to?
it just needs to relate to infrastructure needs. It could be recreational needs.
I mean, could it be the building stuff that we've mentioned
No.
before? Oh.
No, it can't, believe me, if I could use it for the building stuff, the application would look altogether different.
I don't know. My understanding is the definition of infrastructure can be very, very broad if you want it to be.
Well, they're very specific in the guidelines to not include buildings or vehicles.
Okay.
Would this get us started on the culvert, the Blazer Drive culvert?
Yes.
We have like a ton of money in engineering that was gonna cost us.
Make the resolution effective for the Blazer Drive culvert at $450,000.
That's the only thing I can think of right away. That's a
That would-
huge ticket item that we know we need money for. Huge ticket item. It's gonna
That we're
be like
moving
$3
forward.
million that we have to move forward on. I can't think of anything else.
No, that makes sense.
Do I have some nods here?
Yeah, I'm leaning toward the Blazer Drive culvert over the
That makes
baseball
sense.
lights.
Yeah.
If that's
Yeah.
something we have to do, then yeah, I'm on
We
board with
have to,
that.
we have to do it.
Okay.
Then I'm on board with that.
Okay, the floor is open for an amended motion. Okay. All right, Councilmember Spanhouse.
I'm going to see if I can get this right. Motion to approve tentatively identified resolution number 18 of 2021, authorizing the filing of an application for funds with the RAAC for needed upgrades / replacement of the Blazer Drive culvert in the amount of $450,000.
We have a nod from the solicitor. It sounds like it's a go. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Taro. Okay, questions, comments? All right, all those in favor indicate for applying for this grant, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right. Last but not least, the floor is open for nominations to appoint for the Ward 5 representative for McCandless Town Council. Is there a nomination? Okay, Councilmember Taro.
These are always very difficult because we always get quality candidates, and we also love how, volunteer oriented a lot of our town members are. So but we have to pick somebody. So I'd like to make the motion to appoint Dr. Kathleen Ropa as Ward 5 representative to McCandless Town Council with a term to December 31st, 2024.
It's actually 23.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
It does say that, but it's incorrect.
okay. And with a term to December 31st, 2023.
I will second it.
And and you made that as a motion? Yes. Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Okay. Councilmember Smith. All right, any comments at all? All right, hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, congratulations, Dr. Ropa. Is there any other new business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Councilmember Flynn. Okay, Councilmember Smith, second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.